believe it or not, we exist in a supernature environment. Not everything is as it seems with the birds, the bees, the trees, and all our human friends and the animals. It is a miraculous theater on whatever level you want to analyze it. It's a miraculous theater. And this miraculous theater of being awakens creative potential. And this is akin to the first magical practitioners in history, the shaman, the tribal leader, that strange person filled with insight, who was the head, the father, the head of the tribe, the wise one, the ancient one. And we have to go back, oh goodness me, 50,000 years, 60,000 years, perhaps longer. Now, last night, mystic creativity is an idea, an aspiration where we try to acknowledge and diminish the very natural traits which get in the way of our creativity, like judgmentalism, a sense that we must control, a sense that we're not good enough, that we doubt, we self-sabotage, we get worked up. If we allow these things to bother us, our creativity dwindles. And then in turn, we worry, will it come back? Will I feel impassioned again? How am I, what's next for me? Will there be another time where I'll go into the studio and make something, make a little bit of history? And so these voices that we're all familiar with, and the sense of how we'll be received, and the envy we might feel for others, other creatives who we might imagine being more fluent than we are, all of these things sap our morale. So the mystic creative approach is to try to acknowledge and lessen the noise that hampers our creativity. And this links, I think, to the shamanic creative. And the reason I gloss shamanism or the shamanic individual, very ancient, is because I think it allows us to access perhaps a more childlike sense of being. Because we might imagine that these ancient peoples were simpler than us, no less clever than we are. We should lose perhaps the very 19th or 20th century view that we are tremendously civilized. And if you go too far back, everything's barbaric, simple, and I don't know, going nowhere, lacking the insight and the genius that we as 21st century creatures are so able to access. So the shamanic creative perhaps shows us the first time in human history when creativity, the wellspring of creativity, was filled with resonating messages from the invisible world. And who knows when we started to see a natural world which we were not separate from. We were just another creature in these forests. Everything was seething with life and intelligence. Spirit beings embodied the grass, the trees, the rivers, the lakes, the pools, the marshes, the stars, the moon, the sun. A living animism. And if today animism we think is so uncivilized, because surely science has told us everything's quantifiable, measurable, explainable, and we can tear it to pieces to the nth degree, view it through an electron microscope and really understand what it's made of. But if there's one thing we might still have access today to, it's animism with scruples. If the world is as supernatural and amazing as ever it was, then you bet that the spirits are waiting for us to notice them. So the miraculous theatre of being is open to the mystic and open to creatives. In fact, open to every human being who wants to quash doubt in their heart. We can transform ourselves, and we know what the theatre of consciousness is like. We know what we do when we've got an exam coming up, or a talk or a presentation to come forth with. We imagine in our minds what it will be like, what will be said, how we'll feel, how well it will go, who's going to be there. And all the while we're creating a theatre that isn't real, it's a theatre of imagination. And we overlay that theatre of imagination, anticipation of what will happen, onto reality. And lo and behold, when we get to the exam, or to the talk, or to the dentist, or whatever it might be, or the cafe lunch, the question is, have we influenced reality by all the imagining that we did when we were back at our apartment? That's a fantastic idea, because we're so used to living and thinking what things are going to be like, and we play it all out in our minds. Hey, what do you know? We actually are magicians, and we never knew it. The shaman was the village doctor, the counselor, the healer, the confidant, the magician, in every sense. And that he was there, always there, and everyone knew him. Everybody knew his position. And in a way, I have a dog visitor outside the door. Can you hear him whining? Just, no, that's okay then, because I can. It's very distracting. That's animism for you. So this tribal leader wasn't pompous, authoritarian, prescriptive. He was just that other person, that person who had that something extra that wasn't common. That's why they were the shaman. And this shaman could have been a spirit medium, could have been a trance medium, could have been telepathic, could have been all the things that we have wondered about. The shaman's job was to communicate with the spirit ancestors, to travel across thresholds of existence into other realms and hear and see things that were truly experienced in a new light, then bring them back to the tribe and tell the story of the journey. I think for us today, and the reason why I'm talking about shamanism is because we go into the studio or the office, we sit at our easel or desk or screen or whatever, and we usually do this alone. So I would say that we go off to another place where we are generally alone to enact an exploration of something remarkable, the search for inspiration, the search for vision, the sense that we have heard a calling, and into the workplace we shall go to answer it. And that calling will make a change in your life, a change to your being, a change to your consciousness, just as the shaman who went off into the snow or the jungle or the sacred cave or the mountaintop to commune with deity and ancestors, to take counsel from the invisible world, the living embodiment of the divine. And I think whilst it's impossible for us to say why the tribe and the shaman were one spirit, they all knew each other intimately. Studies have shown that it is possible even today for us to know intimately around about 200 people really, really deeply. This is an echo of tribal knowledge. I touched on this last night, that ancient wisdom is written into your genetic map. It's in your genes. It's there. Always has been there. And I'm trying these days to read less, study less, not scroll Wikipedia, not buy books, or do any such thing, because this is a sense I have to go looking for knowledge, looking for insight in other places. You know, plugging into Google images that will help me paint or draw. But actually, all the while, not really trusting that here is all the information I need. It's on the table in front of me. It was never lost or hidden. It's not a secret. If we are aware that other people have or say they have a secret, and we are willing to buy into that, we are acknowledging that we are separate from our own archaic wisdom and that someone else has the answer for us. And we better listen, because they're hiding it, and they've said they're hiding it, and they want to show it to us. Rather that we center ourselves and acknowledge that this knowing is in our hearts, not the overthinking head. We think this, we think that, we think too much, not up here. Yes, of course, the rational, the thinking mind has a part to play. God, it's got to be able to move your hand and make discernments about how to draw, how to write, what to write, how to compose a sentence. Remember that Greek philosophy, the triumph of reason, which we profoundly respect today, and it still has cast a long shadow on our education system and the way that society is structured. Greek philosophers were all farmers once, or at least their fathers were farmers. Farmers leaning on their spades, talking across the fence to one another. Greek philosophy began somewhere. And I think that when it comes to understanding truth, the great truths of the reason for existence, what life is for, what its potential is, why I am a unique individual amongst billions on this spinning world of ours. The truth doesn't require us to be literate, doesn't require us to read anything, to study anything, to be anything other than we are. The truth is there, simple, perhaps to be conveyed in a few sentences, not nattering on for 40 minutes or more. It ought to be readily accessible. And this is why community worked really well. And this is why the shaman was at the heart of that community, like a wellspring of well-being for the whole tribe. And the tribe also assisted the shaman, just as our audience assists us as artisans. We are living in a world of complex connections. Connectivity is a 21st century amazing thing. We can know, in the internet sense, people we'd perhaps never meet, but lasting relationships can be built on those connections. People get married from other sides of the world just based on Zoom chats. And what an amazing miracle that is. So we still belong to a tribe. even if we feel, oh, sometimes a desolate separateness when we compose ourselves to sleep. We do that alone, even if we have a partner next to us. When we embark upon our dream time, do we fly with the ancestors? Do we fly with our grandparents' spirit? Or even further back than that? Remember that the shaman, as a tribal guide, eventually turned into the kings and queens and the big leaders that we are familiar with today, and even in early periods when big civilizations came into being. But originally, if we pare it all down, throw all the books away, trust ancestral knowing, the shaman was the first true magical person who could see further into the truth of things and give us the good news. And I think creatives mirror this very closely. True inspiration comes from some mysterious place. The mysterium, almost like a sacred thing, a transaction between a higher level of my being, a higher level of my consciousness, into which I'm not always in contact, or so I might imagine. But when that relationship flowers and I feel I am in the zone, in the place, and lo and behold, a picture appears out of nowhere that surprises me, makes me weep perhaps with the joy of realization. Certainly, the first people to see my art usually are my family. And my lovely wife comes into the studio, and if I do a portrait, she ends up in tears, spontaneously, because there's something about the eyes in the portrait. I often draw and paint people who are dead now. They're intellectuals and impresarios and notable people from the esoteric world and literature from the 19th century and 20th centuries. So these people aren't around anymore. And so there's something about the eyes. A process of drawing over an extended period of time, doing a portrait, suddenly I am getting a bit disturbed by the way I'm drawing it, drawing the person. And it is as if a door is opening, and that drawing is the access point for a spirit, that spirit, to see into the living world. Shamanism. Getting into a state of mind that your work environment changes into a very surreal place, a remarkable place where you commune with unknown beings of love and light who love you intensely and want you to achieve, want you to do wonderful things. Remember, we are at the forefront of all our nearest and dearest, stretching back an unbroken chain into the mists of time. Time out of mind. You can bet, since ancestor worship is probably one of the widest practiced believed religious systems in the world, human beings are creatures of economy. Usually, if things are no use to us, we drop them pretty quick. It's spookily interesting that in this 21st century, there are still people trying to understand what the divine is and trying to experience it. To give me the utmost sense of some divine experience as if it's external from me, because we might well be angels with dirty faces after all. When we spoke of truth earlier and what that might be, it's not as if it's something that isn't around, there are wonderful, wonderful people all over the place producing and making wonderful things. If what is the part of ourselves usually that responds honestly and truly to a bloody good film that makes us cry, or a song that makes us cry, or whatever it is? Our heart starts to sing and resonate with it, and there's nothing wrong with weeping with amazement. So people do access truth all the time and express it, even if they don't necessarily realize it. They transmit it to us, and something in us responds, an honest, almost childlike reaction. I can't, for the life of me, think of an example right now. You know what that's like, you know, when you're put on the spot. What song should I pick that somehow resonated with me? Oh, I know. There's a song called Noah by composed in 1973 by Joe Raposo. I think it was first sung by Frank Sinatra. Now, never mind the nature of the song, but the chorus is what I want to get at here. And we will walk with the lions, soar with the eagles, sing with the nightingales, and live in love and peace. The simplest of sentiments. We shall walk with the lions, soar with the eagles, sing with the nightingales, and live in love and peace. What a prayer. Who thought this up? Good old Joe Raposo. Where was he when he thought this up? But it's everywhere. Beautiful things that catch us. The hair goes up in the back of your neck. You get the shivers. This is something you acknowledge, you've seen, you've understood, you have an experience where truth, there's some fundamental truth being expressed here. It's whatever it is. I reiterate, we are magical practitioners. Angels with dirty faces, shamans. We can take our own counsel with the remarkable, miraculous, where we make something out of nothing, something that's never been seen before, and share it in a word, a deed, a dance, a symphony, a software program. We can't help ourselves. And if there's one thing the internet has done, it's enabled people to share so easily. We said that human beings are perhaps driven by convenience. Boy, it's so convenient. I can share to loads of people in a split second. So the shaman, a time before writing, and the transmission that that individual brought back to the tribe was given orally. And the oral tradition is alive today. It's still with us. I used to know a Druid shaman some years ago. He's dead now. I was with him. I was taught by him and with him for 10 years. Gosh, there's so many anecdotes. These people aren't comfortable to be around. The discomforture we feel is because they are resonating with power and insight, that wonderful things are passed on. The oral tradition doesn't need badges, prescriptions, expectations, rules and regulations. The oral tradition is a song that's simply given. We are more than we think we are. Tomorrow is a new day born. A new light will rise in the east. It can inform your spirit if you open yourself to it. And what is it that the shaman expressed? Perhaps even before language, how were these expressions given? Some of the earliest ritual language were almost just vowel sounds. I think when the shaman goes and searches for found objects of insignificance, childlike in their import, in the woods, I will go for a mindful walk in the woods, across the field, and I'll find a feather, a funny looking stick, a stone with a hole in it, perhaps some tin foil. I don't know, but out there, and you'll pick them up because you don't know why. You bring them back and you collect them, and perhaps they sit on your desk. And when you want to think your thoughts and come up with your vision, your eye passes across these found objects. You've already invested them with some form of magical power. And that's why they're on your desk, even a fluffy toy, for goodness sake. And you look at them and they're your friends. The shaman almost played these found objects like a mnemonic apparatus. And the shaman danced from one to the other and raised his consciousness, his sensitivity to experience new ideas, new insights, new vision. And as the identity, we lose our identity in our creativity if we're in that zone. We forget our name, the people we love, what we've got to do in a few hours. We forget that time exists even. We become a creature, time out of mind, and we enter our creative world and we change into something else. And out of that strange ritualistic theater comes new work. Now, of course, even for early tribal leaders, there was doubt. Days when he didn't hear the voices of the ancestors, days when she did not understand. And perhaps doubts did spring to mind, just as they do for us today. After all, we are not as sophisticated as we perhaps like to think. How to unlock our potential. The past is not something that's far away. It is present in me, present in you. If we think of the past, it rises phoenix-like into this reality. Ancient gods aren't ancient at all because they live in me. They exist in you. All the stories we've ever heard since childhood, the foundation of our earliest experience is stories read to us by those godlike parents. Before we even understood words, something we heard the murmur of noises we didn't understand. All we heard was the sound, the song, the murmur from these strange tall beings leaning over me, giving me food, changing my nappy, reading songs, singing to me. What were all these things before we were told that they were stories and songs? They were just noises, but somehow comforted us in the midst of a new experience. The ancient ones, the old ones. That shaman still exists, and we've read loads about them. We've read about Siberian shamans, the shamans of America, the shamans of Australia, the shamans of... We kind of know, and even if we've read a bunch of books, why not think about some of the themes I've talked about when you next try to create? Set aside the judgments, set aside the troubles, the doubts, the conflicts in oneself. Ask them just to be quiet for a minute whilst you commune with the otherness, that mysterious realm of creativity that's at your disposal. You don't need to be taught how to do it. Just appeal to your knowing that's here, waiting. I think it's an immense privilege to sit here and talk with you. It crystallizes my thoughts, my mind, crystallizes my ideas, brings things into focus. It's done me no end of good to consider the possibility that ultimately became an experience that invisible, intelligent beings from another realm help me in my life. Help me do my art. Help me write. I don't pretend to be a trained writer or a trained poet, but it's there. It's there for me. We should find the wonderful possibility that if we stop paying attention to people telling us that we can't do, and we settle down in a quiet place where no one's listening, we can do it. Oh, I can't sing, but I still sing in the shower now and again when no one's around. That means you can sing. I can't dance, but when there's my favorite music on, I can. We know we can do more than we think we can. Unlock, let these creatures that are burst, these parts of yourself, let them come out. Unlock the prison doors. The key is in your pocket. Do not trammel your existence by imagining you're lesser than. The person you are today is the best version of you, just as tomorrow will be even better than today. And that's amazing. If we let it, that's the key. How much are we willing to be more than positively neutral, that we're going to have a good day today or tomorrow, that we're going to look in the mirror and love ourselves, irrespective of what we thought yesterday? If we can love ourselves, what do we find? Lo and behold, others love us easily. I can't sing, I can't dance, can't do this, can't do that, can't draw very well. Oh, I could never draw. Of course you blow well. For every child, there is not a problem doing these things until they get beaten with some stick. Now, if we paint a door on a wall with a lock keyhole and a handle, and there's children around, they have no trouble believing that that door, that magical door, will open. Open sesame. That door opens easily for children. Magic works well for children. So it also does for madmen, mad people, people who have been defined as having lost proportions of their reason. They also believe that door will open. Dare we share in a little madness in our sophisticated adulthood, that door might just open. Pandora's box, remember? Greek myth tells us that it was all the evils of the world burst out. Oh, I should never have opened that. But actually, it hides a secret. It wasn't the evils of the world. It was freedom unlocked in a box, empowerment unlocked from the box, inner knowing unlocked from the box. the gifts from the great ones, the ancient ones, the old ones, they're all still here. The gifts are waiting for us to let loose our dreams, to believe, to trust, to be open to the possibilities that I could change my entire experience in the next painting I do. I'm going to be a different person. And of course, the tarot cards were a series of cards which showed us a journey, the journey that the soul would make through symbolism. Every day might just be a tarot card through which I will walk to the next one and to the next one. The traveling magician, the traveling artisan, the sacred quest awaits. Over the next hill, maybe. There is a green hill far away, Shangri-La, time out of mind, when I will actually be all I can be and fulfill my potential, just as you can too. Dare we try, dare we let loose the magic in our lives to be that beautiful, creative being that you always have been. You just need to acknowledge it. So, I'll be thrilled to bits if you want to ask me any questions, because I think we might be at that time now. What do you reckon?
Yeah, so we're about at the 10-minute mark before we have to close down. But if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to like type them in the chat. If you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you for the time being. Yeah.
Stunned silence. I don't believe it for a minute.
Check in the chat. I had a question. I was curious to see how your work, or I guess, yeah, how your work has changed as you've gone on this like journey of like spirituality and everything. How is like that physically manifested?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, when I was a lot younger, I had lots of time and no ideas. And for somehow or other, I managed to have loads of ideas and less time. But how has it changed? Well, and again, also the voice of doubt said to me, well, maybe if you paint these things or draw these things or do those things, if they haven't sold, if you do these ones, maybe these will sell. Or if you change yourself this way, they might do. So the marketeer in me who doubts everything will say, okay, so that hasn't worked. Paint it like this, paint like that, paint like the next thing, and maybe they'll sell. And all the while, waiting for me to shut up and listen. Draw and paint what you love, only what you love. Never mind what anybody else thinks. And that can be found in that quiet place when you're alone and you're giving yourself time to be creative. And there's without expectation. And so I think when I spoke last night about mystic creativity and deepened that this evening, we have to somehow quiet down in a profoundly self-nurturing way, to let the doubts sit beside you, but be quiet for a minute, whilst you commune with utmost potential. And I think, yes, small wonder. So when I paint and draw what I love, what should I find? They have no trouble selling. Because I think I'm being at my most authentic. So if I am creating what I truly love to do, what makes me happy and fun, yeah, like a kid in a sandbox, or the first time I ever had a toy, whatever age that was, absorbed for hours, and only, come in for your tea now, love. Oh, it's that time already. Oh. So yeah, it's about it for me. It's about calming down, almost reducing, turning the volumes down, reducing the noise so much by reduction, like simmering the pot until all that's left is the crystals in the bottom. And there we should find sparkling jewels, crystalline forms of amazing things.
Wow, beautiful. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free. You can type in the chat. You can also use the reactionary button to raise your hand. If there's anyone who has any more questions for Gordon. Amazing. Brian.
Yeah, so
there you go.
I could touch a little bit on what I'm doing tomorrow. Ultimate creativity, what that might feel like and how we might get there. What is ultimate creativity? When inspiration is direct and intuitive. That's the realms of ultimate creativity.
I think Brian might have a question. Let me see.
Hey, Gordon, I realized that you said you're not reading anything lately or trying not to, but because of something that I'm writing, I stumbled into Erich Fromm's work, like an old German Jewish social psychologist, and specifically there was something called to have or to be that he wrote, and having mode had to do with like consumerism and trying to possess things, like the reason we get into turf wars or trying to accomplish and achieve things. Then he talked about being mode, and it felt to me like he never covered it enough, and I feel like he did in later books, but I never got to him. But the way that you're speaking, it feels like you're saying a bunch of the stuff that he would have said, and I never got there. And did you by chance read Erich Fromm, or do you know who?
No, I've not read Fromm. Thanks for sharing that. I think first up, I should say that some people are passionate about study and inquiry and reading, and I'm not saying that that's wrong. No way. I mean, goodness, it's interesting if you are deeply positive about that, almost that there's a purposefulness to existence, and that therefore everything that comes across my path is an opportunity for me to engage and interact, and that insight just delivered to my inbox will come. And so a book that you discover, or a song, poem, play, something, anything that you discover is meant for you. And it doesn't matter if you don't see it, because sure as fate, there'll be another one and another and another. It's a constant. We stand on a beautiful, sparkling, sandy beach, watching waves of opportunity come towards us, every single one bringing something to us. And so if we find a book that resonates, by golly, that's meant to be, because it enacts a change in us. It's not accidental. The more we work positively with these ideas, the more they become live things, unlocking the potential that's around us, being willing to embrace it, work with it. The shaman would say, the more I talk with discarnate intelligences, with the spirits of the ancestors, the more that phone line will be enabled. The more I engage with this utmost positivity, the more it will be enabled. And suddenly more and more and more opportunities and insights will come my way. There is no lack. or that there's the sense that we're undeserved. We deserve 5 good things, but not 10. You know, a lot of the, as Westerners, we the, I don't know what you might call it, the Anglo-Saxon work ethic. You might deserve that, but you don't deserve all the rest of it. You've got to work hard and sweat, then you'll merit it. You want to try and stop that. Boy, by golly, it's conditioned in us, I think. Try to think in a different way, always gently, always in a wholesome way. Try to think in a different way. Habits can be broken. It just needs nurturing and patience. Of course, in saying that, doesn't mean that I've got rid of all my bad habits or that I've made a success of the things I'm talking about. You know, it's okay to be inconsistent, and it's okay not to get it, not to manage it. And also, you know, I mean, I think if, let's take meditation as an example, and trying to shut out the noise or trying to stop the wandering mind. You don't get all so uptight that you can no longer sit quietly because you stop thinking about, you start to think about your same old yada yada. No, come on now, bring it back and compose yourself again.